Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast. And yes, I say it every time we have a very special guest. All of our guests are special. But this is also a very special guest who's going to speak about a very special subject because there's all kinds of stuff flying around from the left and from the right, so to speak. And without revealing too much of that and to get going, guest, would you please introduce yourself and spell your name?
Well, hi, Ron. Nice to see you again. My name is Kate Frazer Rego. Start at the top. KateFrazer space, no hyphen, Rego. Said it. I spelled it. What should I do now, Ron?
Just wait for the hard questions.
All right.
Yeah, it's funny because, I always go back to that theme about when people spell their names, and it's, we all go through that all the time. You go someplace, what's your name? You go to the doctor's office. What was that again? I've been a patient here for 20 years. You still don't know my name.
Names are important. Words are important.
Yes. Labels are important as well.
Very important.
And being an old guy, and coming from a background where my mother in particular was, she was the epitome of diverse, equitable, inclusive. She just wanted to know your story. That was her whole thing. But I've got to be quite honest with you, the whole trans thing is a little mind-boggling for somebody my age, because we never really, I don't want to say pointed it out. We never, what is the word? We never categorized it. It was, gay or other nasty words or not. And then, of course, there's the whole drag thing, which some people don't understand. That has nothing to do with sexuality in most cases.
Performance,
exactly. I mean, let's go to the Elizabethan period and speak about Shakespeare, when women couldn't be actors. Mm-hmm. So men had to play women. Could you imagine the guy who had to play Juliet and really had to emote as a woman?
I can imagine. I can definitely imagine.
Yeah.
The other day I saw speaking of my generation, I saw a meme. And the meme had pictures of Elizabethan actors. It had pictures of Jack Lemmon in drag. It had pictures of Monty Python in drag. It had pictures of a number of different classic quintessential pop culture icons.
Milton Berle
in drag. I believe it showed Dustin Hoffman as Tootsie.
Yeah.
It showed Robin Williams as Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah. And it said, why didn't you have a problem with drag then?
Uncle Milty, Thursday nights, the world stopped, or the United States stopped. He was like, it's the same thing that happened with Seinfeld. Thursday night, boom, you gotta stop what you're doing and watch Seinfeld. Uncle Milty, Milton Berle, was the same thing, and he did a drag thing.
Yeah. I hear you, because my parents are of your generation also, Ron. So I have a lot of these conversations with the older adults in my life. And I don't think that you're alone in in just your in your feelings around it, or your, I don't want to say confusion because I feel like that has a negative connotation to it, but just your
lack of clarity. Let's put it that way. It's not, it's lack of clarity.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I get it. And at the same time, people who are trans or non-binary, folks have always existed like that. It's not like suddenly in 2023, all of these trans people popped up,
We're here.
Yeah, like people exist on such a vast, beautiful, diverse spectrum, and cultures exist on such a beautiful, diverse spectrum. Like biology, like the study of like mammals, and like there is such beautiful diversity even there. So I feel like for folks to get confused or to think that something just suddenly started to exist when it didn't before, I just don't see how that could be the case.
Yeah. I mean, I know that existed, and that's why my confusion is in trying to categorize it. It was always there, but now we have more subsets. We have more, subcategories. But the word sub even sounds horrible,
Yeah,
sub,
no, I hear what you're saying though.
Like subculture,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think at a point in time, gay culture was definitely a subculture. It had to be hidden. People who loved differently from the norm had to do so in secret. And that is how subcultures are created. I think when those subcultures then get monetized and kind of mined for their creative juices, which were created out of oppression, out of necessity, out of just the sheer need to express, to stay alive. When that culture gets mined for its goods, that culture needs to be appreciated. That culture needs to be given its due. And I think that, God, how many times do we hear like, yes, queen? And so many queer experiences did come from a subculture because they had to stay in the shadows.
Yeah, although I did work in theater. So,
Well, definitely.
And again, it was there, and nobody spoke of it because it was like, do I have to explain this? That was the people that I hung around with. It's like, honey, come on, do I have to explain this to you? And then, I worked in food service in restaurants. There were nights where I was the only straight guy.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, we've broken it down into these little bits and pieces, and then everybody wants these neat little packages, these very neat little packages. One of the unneatest packages in a way was when I was working in food service. We opened up a new restaurant. The new manager was he was the heir to the Pillsbury fortune, believe it or not. He was he fit the classic. He was a slight little man who floated around. He was gay, and he was married, but his wife was a lesbian. So if that didn't make people go, what? And he was right up front. Barred no holes. He was a riot. But then again, I also felt that was part of his shtick to exist. In other words, I don't want to have to go through this again. I don't want to explain it. I don't want to indoctrinate you. You know, it's like what you see is who I am. Let's get to work. That kind of thing.
You know, I hear that. I'm like, I so deeply appreciate and resonate with people who just choose to live authentically because they're tired of having to do otherwise. And you know, when folks ask me like similar questions like that, and or you know have similar thoughts, I think about like how exhausting it must be to every day have to defend, describe, define, delineate your existence for the comfort of other people, not for you. Mm-hmm. You're just doing your deal.
Well, Black people can say, hey, that's been my life. Now imagine being Black and gay. And it's like, oh my God, I got to deal with two things.
Absolutely. You know? I mean, intersectionality is no joke. And like the Black queer experience is one that like is deeply like underrepresented.
Well,
the Black trans experience.
Oh yeah. Plus there's also the historical aspect.
Yeah.
That's it's horrible to even talk about what they did. And because of that, that's why it's still not widely, well, I can't even say widely, it's not accepted generally. Widely would be meaning that it's at least somewhat accepted, but it's a mess. So as artists, because you know it's also insane as I'm thinking about all this, because what does LGBTQ have to do with the arts? Are you kidding me? I mean, if you took these people or those people out of the equation, the arts would be very, very thin. You know, and then there's that other weird prejudicial viewpoint of, well, if you're an artist, you got to be a little light in your loafers. What, you know, what kind of comments did you get at your, and please tell us about your most recent show. You were in a group show at the Grimshaw-Gudewicz Gallery in Fall River at Bristol Community College.
You got it. So yeah, the show, first of all, is just an absolutely beautiful show. And it was curated by Kathleen Hancock, who just did such a stunning job of choosing the artist and like writing up the show. And she really noticed things within the work that for me personally, within my work, I was very, very happy that like just someone else like picked up on these themes. And something that I had mentioned when, you know, doing like a walkthrough of the show and speaking with Kathleen was that, you know, often the majority of my work has been critiqued or reviewed through a white, straight male lens.
Wow.
Which it's fine. I've had fabulous reviews and I am incredibly grateful for the reviews that I've gotten. Thanks, Don.
Don Wilkinson, that is, yep.
But it was so lovely just to get a different perspective. Just to have someone who walks, I mean, I don't want to be so bold as to assume that like we're walking the same path, but to have people who walk a similar path as you see themes in the work that like that you intend to be there, but most folks don't pick up on, is a beautiful thing. So the show is called Beyond Binary, and it explores the idea of binaries in a variety of senses, from gender binaries all the way to just like binaries about material or connection. And a lot of them have to deal with gender or orientation. And so those have been themes of my work for quite some time. I mean, ever since I even started showing like work back in grad school, I've always had themes of gender and sexuality within the work. And, over the years, as my work has progressed and grown and just expanded, I am just always just very, very observant of the reactions that folks have to the work. And I had such a beautiful reaction to the work at the Beyond Binary opening. When I say that the number of young folks, but the generation below me, showing up at the gallery, having these really like thoughtful discussions about the work and like seeing things in the work that they can connect to was great. I honestly didn't have a single negative conversation about the work at the show. It was very positive. It was, and I mean, and that, that could be generational, that could be because of where the college is, where the gallery is, like on a college campus. Could be a number of things, but I think the show was handled it was curated very thoughtfully. It was written about very thoughtfully. The artists had very thoughtful write-ups about their work. And I think it created just a really nice dialogue. It felt very open, very inviting. I think a lot of people left the show like feeling like they saw some piece of themselves within the work. And ultimately that was the goal.
Well, let me ask you a question then. Was a majority, I mean, while you were there, were a majority of the visitors, the attendees, were they, describe them?
I would say I had, there were a number of Gen Zers, if you want to put it that way. There were some older folks. I definitely had some, there were some, the boomer generation was there a little bit. We had some Gen Xers, I think I definitely saw a wide variety of ages and walks of life, which I think was the goal of the show. It really was to just open up a conversation and just to get as many people in to see it as possible.
We all have stage fright before any opening, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I had an opening. I was part of a group show. There were 4 of us. I was the only European amongst 4 African American artists.
Yeah.
In a black gallery in a relatively predominant black city, Detroit.
Yeah.
And I went over in my head these scenarios about how I would have to react to whatever that was not, I don't want to say, that was challenging, questions that were challenging, comments that were challenging, so on and so forth. Best part was, didn't have to do that.
That's great.
What a feeling. I can only imagine what it's like for anyone who is in a situation where they feel not, what's the word? They don't feel like everybody else. They don't feel like the people that are around them.
Yeah.
They always have to make an excuse. They always have to compensate. They always this, that, the other. And wow, what a difference. What a difference. Let me ask you about some of these terms, because I think that is what is, and I have to use the word confusing because many people don't understand what binary means, what cisgender means, what trans actually means, what transvestite actually means. There's so much misinformation or what's the word? Cultural? No, that's not the word. anecdotal supposition. I'm just drawing a blank on word. People like to go, oh, oops, click, or boom, I've categorized this. I'm happy. Now I know how to behave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first, just right off the bat, I need to say I am by no means an expert. I think queer identity isn't a monolith like anything else. I am one queer artist in a sea, an ocean of queer artists. So, I mean, I can only speak from my experiences and for myself. As an educator, I helped found the LGBTQ club at the middle school and elementary school that I taught at for about a decade. And I was able to really try my best to be a safe place and a source of comfort for kids who really just want to find some community and some understanding and some empathy, and they want a safe place to find themselves. So that's where I'm coming from. So please don't consider me like a source of like extreme knowledge, but
no, just from a personal perspective.
Yeah. Ask me the question again, Ron.
There are these terms that many people are not familiar with. They're hearing them more and more in media or in conversation or whatever, and they're going, "What the hell does trans mean? What do you mean you were born this, but you feel like that? What does that?" Because now that has all these little subsets as well. What's cisgender? I hear that term all over the place. And what is the pronoun? What's with the pronouns? Hear me, he, me, she, we, thee, they, us. It's like people are just completely befuddled. And
well, I guess I should start
Yeah.
at the beginning and say, well, my pronouns are she, they, which means that I, have no issue being referred to as a she, her, or a they, them. And quite frankly, as an elementary and middle school teacher, I talked about myself in the third person for years. So I don't necessarily understand the big deal with the they, them. But I understand that some folks have trouble with it. All I can say is, understanding yourself is it can be a really beautiful thing. When you are able to come to your truths about who you are, and you're able to give those a name, that can be a really powerful thing for anybody in any way, and I think that for a long time, especially within the LGBTQ community, so much of the language that was available was language that came from a place of hurt, a place of hate, a place of prejudice, a place of oppression. And I think that, I think the words matter. And I think that as we have grown as a culture, as a society, I think that we've been able to define more language around experiences, orientations, truths, realities that people are already living. And imagine going about your life like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, not knowing like who you are. And then at 60, suddenly you have a word that's like, that's my truth. And at 60, you get to begin?
Yeah.
How is that fair? Like, I, as an elementary and middle school teacher, I had the opportunity to teach dozens of queer kids. And I taught queer kids who were queer and had to stay in the closet because their truth was not safe for them. And I had other queer kids who were able to live their truth. They had a support system, whatever that was, that enabled them to, speak their truth out into the world. And when I tell you that the kid that had that blossomed, found themselves, and flourished, that makes all of it worth it. When you see the kid that has to stay in the closet start hurting themselves because they're having to hide their truth because it's literally physically unsafe, that the only way that they can not hurt is to distract themselves through physical pain that they inflict. The choice isn't very hard.
Our daughter's,
the choice isn't very hard.
Our daughter's a freshman in college, and she's going for psychology.
Good for her.
And what's amazing is that there is such a shortage of psychologists and psychiatrists, especially pediatric.
Absolutely.
And so right away we have this other thing that there's no support system, whether it's an organizational support system through medicine or the medical arts. You have obviously parents and family who, depending on the ethnic backgrounds or how many generations here, I mean, there's so many factors, and ignorance and intolerance just runs across the lines. It doesn't matter where you came from, what language you speak, so on and so forth. So how? Well, two questions. One, how were you able to create this club for these students without the crazies protesting outside? I mean, they can't have a drag book reading at the library without the crazies coming out. How did you get away with it? And I don't mean that. How did you get away with it? How did you do it with?
Oh, no. You can say it, Ron. I don't work for this school anymore, so I definitely get away with it. I will say that I definitely, in my decade of working within that school network, I was called several names by several parents very vocally, and they were very intolerant, and I ignored them because my job is to provide a safe space for all of my students. And I don't get time to deal with intolerance when that's my job. So ultimately, the reason why that club started was because I had a student early on in my teaching career who came out to their teachers as trans. And when I tell you that the fear, the vulnerability, the hope, the desire for connection in that kid's eyes as they said that truth to me, told me right away that I had work to do, because there wasn't any kind of support system within the school for a kid like this. None. And this kid needed support. This kid needed community. And I knew that this kid wasn't the only kid. This kid went on to, over the course of several years within school, like transition. Sometimes I would say very traumatically for them. They did not have an easy transition. They did not have one that I wouldn't have wanted it for them. I would have wanted them to have a more supportive, to have had a more supportive transition than they did. But they came out on the other end of it. And she's a beautiful young woman. And she, went on to high school, and her and I have lost touch. I mean, obviously I'm not her teacher anymore. Mm-hmm. But I am incredibly proud of the young lady that she became. And I have to ask myself if, and this is not to like put any kind of like super importance on me, but like if that club hadn't existed, would she have made it to the end of high school?
Exactly.
Because third grade is not the youngest grade that I've had students come out to me. So, and I know that there are lots and lots of feelings around kids coming out as trans, as gay, and I just don't want to get into those arguments. I mean,
I understand. Yeah.
Like if a child comes to me and is vulnerable enough to open up and share their truth with me, then I'm gonna take them at that. And in the 10 years that I've been doing it, I have yet to have a kid who was in the Q Plus Club, which is what we eventually called the club, say they regretted it. One of the last times I was at school, at that school that I taught at, I ran into another former student who actually pulled me aside and thanked me for the Q Plus Club. And he said that while he was always an ally within the club, he went to high school and met his absolute best friend. And his best friend is LGBTQ. And because of being in like our club at school, he had all the language that he needed to support her. And he said she went through some really tough times and I was able to be there for her. And we are such close friends. And I had never had a kid say that to me before. That kid, quite frankly, is an exceptional human being and, left me speechless.
Yeah.
But that meant a lot. You do a lot of, you want to create a space for kids to find their voices. And part of that is through language and teaching them what LGBTQIA plus means. Teaching them, some things like we talked about the differences between like gender and orientation, how they are not the same thing. We talk about, the human experience as a spectrum that like people grow and change and expand over time. We talk about pronouns, why pronouns are important, what to do if you get them wrong, which honestly, like just correct yourself and move on. And we were also able to do like some activism, like we would write holiday cards to queer inmates who were incarcerated. We had a food drive and we got canned goods for LGBTQ seniors. We were able to go to Pride. And again, when I tell you about affirming experiences, seeing a kid who, has no safe place to display a rainbow, walk into Buttonwood Park and just see it awash in rainbow and color and love is love.
Why is accommodation considered indoctrination by the people who just don't? It's not just a matter of not getting it. It's, you know, Elie Wiesel said the opposite of love is not hate. It's indifference.
Mm. I think that people generally are afraid of things that they don't understand. They're afraid of things that confront them, whether that's confront ideas that they were raised with, a culture they were raised with, a religious belief that they were raised with, a relationship model that they were raised with, you know, and I think people are oftentimes very afraid of things they don't understand. And unfortunately, for a lot of folks, the reaction is not, tell me more. Like, help me welcome you. Help me not like feel affronted. Like, and I shouldn't say help in that, like, it's the responsibility of the queer person to do this work. It's not. But like, I wish that people were more open-minded, I guess. You know, people are very, very afraid of things they don't understand, and they don't want to understand. They don't extend the hand of empathy. And I think that a lot of folks use things like language, use things like drag shows, use things like library books,
Yeah.
to stop a conversation, to stop themselves from having to have a conversation with themselves. I mean, you know, I think sometimes people need people, and I say this so generally that, like, you know, so many folks wake up, exist, go to jobs, live their day, and no part of their existence is questioned. No part of their existence is considered a threat. No part of their and you know, I think most of us are we're just living. I'm just living my life out here, you know, trying to be a teacher, trying to be a parent, trying to be a partner, trying to be a good person, trying to help my community. And you know, I'm not the feminazi that I've been called.
Oh my gosh. Now let me turn this back to art, because you know, art is life, life is art.
Yeah.
And just because you're queer does not necessarily mean you have to be a queer artist. It means that you are an artist who happens to be queer.
Absolutely.
And you don't feel like raising the rainbow banner over every single piece of work that you do, or call attention to your queerness or anything like that.
Yeah.
But then there are those who fall into a category where, you know, people ask me about the subjects that I paint, and I'm not being facetious. I said, well, there is pain in painting, and there is pain in my painting. Painting. I mean, I've chosen to go from having no emotions and you know, doing subjective work, to doing the subject matter that I currently do. I'm doing work of people in my family. I mean, my dad, where he was stuck in this weird situation. My mother, you know, she was in a situation. I mean, everyone has these incredible challenges that either made you or broke you. But the pain has to be, well, it's either going to be pain or celebration. And I have a funny feeling that most people, when they see queer people celebrating their queerness, that freaks them out more than anything else.
Joy
Why
can be
can't
scary
they?
for people.
Why can't they let people be happy? And they think that they're
Yeah.
campaigning for more membership in that club. You know?
I mean, I just got my membership card, Ron. So I think they're sending out all the new ones. We should all be getting our queer membership cards soon. I mean, I think that is a great question. Why can't people let other people be happy? Period. And yeah, I think that when folks are living their lives authentically, unabashedly, joyfully, and someone deems that lifestyle like wrong, naughty, like, how dare you be enjoying your subversive lifestyle? How dare you be happy? I guess I want to ask them, like, why are you so unhappy? Who made you the referee on people's happiness? That has to be exhausting.
Yeah, it does. It does.
To constantly be monitoring everybody else to make sure that they're doing the thing that you deem appropriate to be doing. Exhausting.
I mean, I just try to look, and that's the other thing. I when I do my work, I tell people, we have to write these monographs and statements and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's like, I truly, people, oh, it's so powerful and emotional. And I was like, well, thank you, because I tried to put myself in the skin of that person. As crazy as it may sound, I want to know what was the temperature like? Was it warm, cold? I want, their shoes too tight. I mean, I really want to know these things because somehow it flows into my work, and obviously it gets a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're trying to navigate your way through life as a queer person,
mm-hmm.
there's all these slots you're supposed to fit into. Going to the bathroom, male, female. Oh, well, what the heck? What do they want us to do? Build an LGBTQ bathrooms? Like, no, dummy. It's a bathroom. You go to Europe, they have a bathroom. Whoever's in there, you don't go in there. It's and it's an attitude that is just so prevalent. I mean, there's also this, a lot of and I hate, I'm going with James Baldwin. I don't like to use the word black because it doesn't really mean anything. As white means nothing. I'm a European of European heritage, and my friends are of African heritage. Okay. And we don't even have to throw American in there. It doesn't really matter. Okay. But I have friends who are discovering their Africanness. Their imagery is going into this very incredibly primitive, beautiful, strong works. But that stuff kind of intimidates people or makes people think, oh, well, you're not running around in the jungle. What the hell do you know about that? Now I look at a queer person trying to get down into what that means. And of course, there is I use the word gender. Women, probably more so. And it is really tough to talk without creating generalities, but you have to have the big chunks, so that you can break them down into smaller pieces or find out what pieces make those chunks, chunks. And women, for example, who, back when I was a kid, there was like, oh, the ladies who live across the street. No, they're not sisters. They're just friends. They're spinsters. Roommates. Yeah. You have two guys do the same thing. even too straight, and right away, boom. Oh yeah, they're queers, So all of this is a lot of baggage to carry and a lot of luggage to unpack.
Yeah.
So we've only got a few minutes remaining. Where do you go from here as a human, an artist? And that's enough. I don't even have to categorize what kind of human you are.
I think the work that I've been doing right now is I'm really interested in the question, how do you talk to the quietest places inside of yourself? How do you get to that center? And when you get there, what's there? Like, what opens up to you in this space? How expansive is it? What governs that space? So it's an exploration of identity. I certainly deal with themes of like gender in the work. I mean, some of the characters have very, very gendered names: Sky Woman, Grass Man. Do I talk a lot about duality and connection? And ultimately, the work is about connecting with yourself. The work is about connecting to your inner child, your inner voice, your inner space, and connecting with others and the value of those connections. I think that we live in a very, very, very digital age. We live in an age of like social media and superficiality. And I think people need to start coming back to themselves. Coming back to themselves, connecting with themselves so that they can connect better with others and their community. In a more holistic and empathetic way.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, yeah. Well, things are better than they used to be, but they can always be, there's the colloquial term, more better around
More
here.
better.
More better,
yeah, absolutely.
Where do you think we'll be in, let's not even go that far down, 10 years from now?
Well, in 10 years, my child will be 20. My child, I hope at 20 years old has no problem finding a community that embraces her, embraces the partners that she chooses, and that she's allowed to live her life with whatever identities she feels ring true to her, and that she's able to navigate the course of her life with compassion and empathy and love from whatever community she finds herself in. Because ultimately, that's what we want for everyone. Exactly. Everyone has the right to that love and support and community and that opportunity to grow. And yeah, a lot has changed. I am incredibly proud of Gen Z. They're making leaps and bounds.
Yep.
And they're teaching us along the way. So I listen to them and I just keep learning.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Based on this conversation, I've also discovered that there's way more to this. You can't squeeze all this into an hour. So I think what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put it out there now, is one of the next grants that I write is going to be to have find and support LGBTQ podcast host that is just going to focus on LGBTQ in the arts and culture, because again, it is such it has to be categorical now, because where do you where do you find the frozen peas? You know, you don't find them in the paper
In the
towel
dairy
aisle.
section.
In a dairy section. Exactly. So for now, it would be a great thing to do, because as you've got young kids coming up, they want to be an artist. In some cultures, backgrounds, families, that's, oh my God. Now imagine being queer and wanting to be an artist. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this has been a great conversation, Kate. I really,
I'm
really
so
thank you
glad.
so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me back on. I always love coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And like I tell people, it's just a conversation. There's no real, I don't have an agenda. That would be too much work. So, all right. Well, with that in mind, folks, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to the folks from Heavenly Spirits who support us, and the Mass Cultural Council, and the local agents, the Fairhaven Cultural Council and the New Bedford Local Cultural Council. And thank you to our guest, Kate Frazer Rego, no hyphen.
No.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.